What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the LeagueFFB. Today we are going to be doing a 2-round Superflex tight end premium PPR rookie mock draft with landing spots. We used a mock draft for the landing spots, so that will be linked in the description. You can check that out if you want to check it out. But without wasting any more time, why don't we just hop into this mock draft and talk about these prospects and where they landed, and I can tell you guys why I am taking them at these picks. So, like I said, this is a Superflex mock coming off the board at the 101. Going to the Chicago Bears, it is going to be Caleb Williams, 6'1", 215 pounds, had a 2023 season with 3,633 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And this landing spot for Caleb Williams is probably something that could be a likely case scenario. We've seen the reports of Caleb Williams potentially not wanting to land in Chicago. I don't know how much of that is just smoke screens at the moment, but if this is the landing spot, he is going to be in a situation where he can play with DJ Moore, he can play with Cole Kmet, so the surrounding cast isn't the worst of surrounding cast that you could ever be put around. This is a guy we've said is very good. He's a generational talent to some, and this is a guy who we have deemed as the 101 for a long time. I don't think anything's going to change until we see something else happen that makes us change our minds. So right now, Caleb Williams, he is the 101 coming off the board in this mock. Now, coming off the board at the 102, we are staying at the quarterback position, and that is Drake Maye going to the Washington Commanders, 6'4", 230 pounds, and he came off the board round 1, pick 2 in this mock draft, so he was the second overall pick, coming off a 2023 season where he had 3,608 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, and this is a team that has Antonio Gibson and Curtis Samuel as upcoming free agents. That doesn't really sway our decision. They still have Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson Jr., and you hope that they can add a little bit more of reliability at that tight end position, even though Logan Thomas hasn't been bad for the last couple years. But Drake Maye, he goes into this system. New head coach, Dan Quinn. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. You see that they also now have just added offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. But this is a quarterback who I am very high on as well. I think he's a very good quarterback. And in your Superflex leagues, man, those quarterbacks are worth their weight in gold. So we are going to be taking him here at the 102. And that takes us to our 103. Now, coming off the board here at the 103, it is going to be Jayden Daniels, quarterback of the New York Giants, actually, 6'4", 210 pounds, and they selected him round 1, pick 6, coming off of a 2023 season as well with 3,812 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Now, I do think that this pick is interesting. This is a pick that Brian Daboll is going to have to make, right? He's the guy who kind of created Josh Allen for what we've seen, and now he gets a guy like Jayden Daniels. It's going to be interesting to see if this is something that could actually happen. I doubt it will, because they did financially commit to Daniel Jones last offseason. That was a pretty big contract that they gave Daniel Jones. It got a lot of criticism, and I think rightfully so. Now we have to see them maneuver how they're going to use that contract. But in this mock draft, they take Jayden Daniels, so we have to take Jayden Daniels here at the 103. And again, keep in mind, this team has Saquon Barkley as a unrestricted free agent, so the surrounding cast is pretty suspect. I'm not going to lie. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darren Waller. They also have some other free agents in Paris Campbell and Sterling Shepard. It's not good, man. There's not a good surrounding cast here. You hope that they address it this offseason, but we do like Jayden Daniels because he has the rushing upside. He has that rushing upside floor. And what he lacks with the weapons in the air, he's going to be able to make up with his feet on the ground. So we do like Jayden Daniels here as the 103. And I know you guys have been hearing it. Where is Marvin Harrison Jr.? So that takes us to the 104. At the 104, the New England Patriots select Marvin Harrison Jr. This was round 1, pick 3 in the NFL draft. This guy's 6'4", 205 pounds. We've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr., generational talent. However, keep in mind, this is a Superflex league, and I do not like this landing spot for Marvin Harrison Jr. The New England Patriots feels like it could be the worst of the possible landing spots for Marvin Harrison. And making this selection here at pick 3 in the NFL draft, that means that the New England Patriots are going to be passing on a quarterback. Does that mean they're sticking with Mac Jones? Does that mean they're sticking with Bailey Zappi? Are they going to go try and play around in free agency with a Ryan Tannehill or something like that? It doesn't sound good to me. And this team lacks a lot of infrastructure for Marvin Harrison to have a good environment to grow and really take advantage of the NFL as a fantasy football wide receiver. And so I don't really love the landing spot, but this guy is still a great wide receiver. So he is going to get that 104 draft capital in our rookie drafts. He's just not going to go ahead of the quarterbacks who were also picked in the top 6. So to me, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's coming off the board at the 104, and now we go on to the 105. And coming off the board at the 105, that is going to be Malik Nabers for the Los Angeles Chargers. Picked round 1, pick 5. He had a 2023 season with 89 receptions, 1,569 yards, and 14 touchdowns. And does anybody hate this spot for Malik Nabers? Nabers? My guess is probably not. They have a new head coach here in Jim Harbaugh. You're going to pair him with a quarterback like Justin Herbert for the foreseeable future, and this guy feels like he could be the successor to a guy like Keenan Allen and be that alpha wide receiver one there in Los Angeles long term. I think this pick does mean that there could be a potential cap casualty in Mike Williams. He is due a lot of money. They do have to come up with a lot of money. It's going to be interesting to see how they do this. But I love this landing spot from Malik Nabers, and I know that there's been some rumors and some chatter about the history of Jim Harbaugh and how he uses his offenses and how he's primarily a very rush-heavy attack. But picking a wide receiver like Malik Nabers at the 105, having a quarterback like Justin Herbert, it just feels like that may be something that's being a little bit overblown at the moment, and this guy's going to get his no matter what. So I love Malik Nabers here at the 105. Now moving on to the 106, this is our first surprise of the draft, and this is going to be Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, who drafted him round 1, pick 31, and this is like an elite landing spot for Troy Franklin. I love this landing spot for Troy Franklin. I love Franklin as a prospect, but then you put him in this offense where he gets to play with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Rashee Rice. It's going to be electric for Troy Franklin. I can't get over the landing spot, and I think if he goes there at the pick 31 in the NFL draft, you're going to have to consider Troy Franklin this high in your rookie drafts. Coming off of a 2023 season here where he had 81 receptions, 1,383 yards, and 14 touchdowns, and it just doesn't get much better than this for Troy Franklin. So Super Bowl contenders, Kansas City Chiefs, the rich get richer. They go and address that wide receiver room, and Troy Franklin is their guy. Count me in. I'm all in on Troy Franklin. Now moving on to the 107 in this rookie draft, we are going to be selecting Brock Bowers, tight end for the Denver Broncos, and he was picked round 1, pick 12. He had a 2023 season of 56 receptions, 714 yards, and 6 touchdowns. What is there not to like about Brock Bowers? This guy has been elite at the collegiate level. He goes to an offense where Coach Sean Payton is going to probably get the best out of him. There is going to be some question marks at the quarterback position. Is it going to be Jarrett Stidham? Is it going to be somebody else that they end up picking in the second round of the NFL draft, or maybe they end up going after a free agent? There are question marks there at the quarterback position in Denver. But Brock Bowers feels like a cornerstone piece to this Denver Broncos offense moving forward, and a guy who I think could compete with Jerry Jeudy, compete with Courtland Sutton for the target leader on this offense, and a guy who's going to be very, very good for your fantasy football teams, especially in this type of format where it is a tight end premium. Sign me up on Brock Bowers. The landing spot's a little bit unique. I don't know if I've seen this mocked out very often, but I don't mind it at all. So buy me in at Brock Bowers, the 107. Moving on to the 108, that's where we go back to the wide receiver position. This is where we take Rome Odunze, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, and he was picked round 1, pick 8. So it's funny that he's going here at the 108. This is a guy who had a 2023 season, 92 receptions, 1,640 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Absolutely balled out at Washington. We love what we've seen out of Rome Odunze, and he goes here to this Falcons offense where he gets to play with a offensive core of Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Who's the quarterback? That's something we're going to have to figure out, but I do like Rome Odunze here. I do think it kind of caps his ceiling slightly, just having the offense as crowded as it is, and then obviously having the question marks at the quarterback position. And they do have a new head coach in Raheem Morris, so we will see how that pans out for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. But I do like this landing spot for Rome Odunze. Hopefully they just get that quarterback upgrade in the draft or in free agency to help support all of these beautiful fantasy football options. Moving on to the 109, that is where we select Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver for the Arizona Cardinals, and he was picked in the first round, pick 27. And if I remember correctly, it's because the Arizona Cardinals traded back up into the first round to get this guy, Brian Thomas Jr. He's coming off of a 2023 season where he had 68 receptions, 1,177 yards, and 17 touchdowns, so a touchdown monster there at LSU. He competed for that touchdown record. They have their solid quarterback of the future in Kyler Murray, and Marquise Hollywood Brown is a unrestricted free agent this offseason, so they are going to be looking for a wide receiver to come in and be that number 1 wide receiver in this offense. Brian Thomas Jr. is their pick. He's their guy. I do love this pairing. You see what they're starting to do with this offense. Trey McBride, Brian Thomas Jr., Kyler Murray. It seems like they're starting to retool for the future, and I love what they're doing there in Arizona. So this is a great landing spot for Brian Thomas Jr., and honestly a testament to how deep and how good this draft has been so far, because you're getting a player like this at the 109. It just feels like you're getting a great value here, and there's really nothing negative to say about this landing spot or about Brian Thomas Jr. Now moving on to my 110, that is the first shocker of this draft, I'm not going to lie, because J.J. McCarthy goes to the Atlanta Falcons. He was picked round 2, pick 43. And we just talked about, can Atlanta get that quarterback upgrade when we were talking about Rome Odunze going to the Atlanta Falcons. And now they get J.J. McCarthy early second round. This is a guy who's coming off of a 2023 season with 2,991 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. So obviously he wasn't throwing the football a ton, but you plug J.J. McCarthy into this offense with Rome Odunze, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. It's hard to think that those type of weapons can't elevate J.J. McCarthy and turn him into at least a decent, solid pro. It's got to be an upgrade from Desmond Ridder, right? But with all of those things said, this is a guy who can plug and play. They do get the quarterback upgrade, even if it's not the upgrade we wanted or even projected to happen in Atlanta. This is a guy who's going to be the upgrade regardless, and I do like this landing spot. And again, being in a Superflex league, you get a guy taken like this, I think it's hard to argue that he should go lower than this. This is a guy who I would be taking here at the 110 in my Superflex draft. Now, moving on to the 111, that is where we draft Adonai Mitchell for the Carolina Panthers, and he was picked round 2, pick 33. He's going to this Panthers offense that needs pass-catching options. He had a 2023 season where obviously he was playing alongside another guy who we deem as a first or second round talent in Xavier. He posted 55 receptions for 845 yards and 11 touchdowns. And this Carolina Panthers team, like I said, is looking for passing options. They have upcoming free agents in DJ Shark and Laviska Shenault. So the wide receiver room is probably going to be Adam Thielen and Jonathon Mingo. And that's really it as far as solidified options. And I don't even know if we can call Jonathon Mingo a solidified option up to this point. And we know that Adam Thielen has been talking in the offseason about wanting to play for a contender and things like that. So this could be a very good situation for Adonai Mitchell to step in, take over that alpha wide receiver 1 duty right away for Bryce Young. And I do like the upgrade, who I'm assuming is going to be an upgrade. Obviously, we still have to see the games play out, of the head coach here in Dave Canales. He has helped guys like Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, and things like that in the past improve as professionals at the NFL level. So we hope that he can do the same thing with Bryce Young. Give Bryce Young, Adonai Mitchell, another receiving threat. I think this has a little bit of risk built into it. Obviously, that's why we're taking him here at the back half of the first round, but I do think that there's a lot of upside in a pick like this as well. So I love Adonai Mitchell here at the 111. And we just talked about him, but we are going to be selecting Xavier at the 112. He goes to the Tennessee Titans. He had a very solid 2023 season. He posted 75 receptions for 1,014 yards and 5 touchdowns. And you can kind of see the changes that are starting to happen here in Tennessee. They move on from Mike Vrabel. They hire Brian Callahan, who also brings over his dad, Bill Callahan, who's been one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL for the last couple of seasons. They have free agents who are going to be Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. They're likely moving on from both of these guys, turning over that new leaf in Tennessee. It is going to give them a young nucleus of Will Levis, most likely. I mean, I guess they could go after a quarterback this year, but I just don't expect them to do it here with the first year of Brian Callahan. And then they're surrounding Levis with guys like Tajay Spears, Xavier Worthy, and Treylon Burks, even Chigakonkwo too. So that is a pretty unique young nucleus. It is a very quick core there in Tennessee, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this team moving forward. I think there is some question marks about the quarterback long term. I don't know if Will Levis is really their guy, but getting him another receiving weapon like this in Xavier Worthy is definitely going to let us know that over the course of the season. And I do like this landing spot for Xavier Worthy enough that we are considering him here in the late first round. Now, before we go on to the second round of this rookie mock, I do want to thank our sponsors over at Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to win some cash during the Super Bowl this upcoming week, they are hosting a new customer special where you can play higher or lower on Patrick Mahomes over half a total yard. Obviously, you guys are going to be smashing the over on that one. If you sign up using code LeagueFFB or use the link in the description, you can receive up to a 100% deposit match, and you will get that free pick'em. You can play in any of these yellow states here. And again, make sure you are signing up using code LeagueFFB when you sign up. That will give you that 100% deposit match and the Patrick Mahomes Super Bowl special. So once again, thank you to Underdog for sponsoring this video. Make sure you're using code LeagueFFB when you sign up. But let's get into the second round of this mock draft, and we're going to be starting here at the 201, where the Las Vegas Raiders select Michael Penix Jr. in the second round. It was round 2, pick 44. He did have a 2023 season where he went for 4,903 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And I think this landing spot is interesting for Michael Penix. He's still kind of one of those unproven prospects. There are a lot of question marks about Michael Penix's game, but you put him here in this situation, I think he's going to get a chance to compete with Aiden O'Connell for the starting job year one. They have now hired full-time coach Antonio Pierce, who did a great job motivating those guys at the back half of the season. How his head coaching tenure will play out in Las Vegas is still to be seen, but I do think we did see enough out of Antonio Pierce to think that this offense can get going a little bit. You put Michael Penix Jr. in an offense that has Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer. I know that there's some question marks at the running back position. Josh Jacobs is a unrestricted free agent, but they do have Zamir White, who did show us a little bit down the back half of the stretch here at the end of the season in 2023. And I think the upside of Michael Penix is good enough that, especially here as a top 45 pick in the NFL draft, going to a situation where he can compete for a starting job right away, this is probably a good value on Michael Penix Jr. You get him here at the 201 in a Superflex. You might be able to get a couple years out of Michael Penix, and if he does translate to the NFL level and turns into a pro, you're getting a starting quarterback here with a big arm at the 201. It just feels like a good value for you in your Superflex drafts. Now moving on over to the 202, that's where we see the New England Patriots select quarterback Bo Nix. They take him round 2, pick 34 of the NFL draft, and Bo Nix, we talked about it with Marvin Harrison Jr. I didn't like the quarterbacks there. It was Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones, maybe a free agent. Well, it turns out that they go Bo Nix. So Bo Nix is the center of this offense. He had a 2023 season where he went for 4,508 yards, 45 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. And now knowing that, that makes me feel a little bit better about Marvin Harrison. Not a ton better. I still think we need to answer some questions about Bo Nix at the NFL level. Obviously, the arm strength has been an issue. We've seen that on display a few times, but the short and intermediate accuracies are pretty hard to knock. Obviously, like I said, they passed on that first round quarterback by taking Marvin Harrison Jr., but they do land Bo Nix here in the second round, making that stack of Bo Nix and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think there's worse stacks in the NFL, and I think there's worse starting quarterbacks in the NFL than Bo Nix can be. And even though I don't really know how I feel about Gerard Mayo as a head coach, he still has a lot to prove. He gets that nucleus of Bo Nix, Marvin Harrison Jr., Juju Smith-Schuster, Demario Douglas, Ramondre Stevenson. I think it's an above average offense at the NFL level, and there is definitely going to be some fantasy points to be had. I think you can kind of bank on Bo Nix and Marvin Harrison Jr. and getting a starting quarterback in the NFL here at the 202. Like I said, your Superflex leagues, those quarterbacks are worth their weight in gold. Sign me up. I'll take him at the 202 and take the shot. Now moving on to the 203, that's where we had another wide receiver come off the board. In fact, this wide receiver was drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. It is Xavier Legette. He went to the Buffalo Bills, round 1, pick 28. And this is a guy who I like the tape enough, but it's not super impressive to me. He feels like a deep threat, but I think that's good with the Buffalo Bills. It does feel like a good fit. 2023 season, he had 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I think if there weren't 5 quarterbacks drafted in the top 50 players of the NFL draft in this mock draft, we probably would have seen Legette go a little bit earlier in this mock, maybe have even creeped into the late first round of your rookie mocks. But keep in mind, this is a team who has Gabe Davis. He is a unrestricted free agent, and if they let him walk, I think Xavier Legette will step into that Gabe Davis role, and I think he'll fit in pretty seamlessly in that Gabe Davis role. I don't know what the ceiling is for a guy like Legette as long as Stephon Diggs is still there in the offense and guys like Dalton Kincaid, but this definitely does feel like a Gabe Davis replacement pick. I don't know if you use a first round on a replacement for Gabe Davis, but you do got to get more weapons there for Josh Allen at the wide receiver position. So they go get Xavier Legette. It does feel like a good enough replacement, and I do like the landing spot enough that I would be considering Xavier Legette here in the top 15 players of my rookie draft. Now moving on to the 204, that is where we see Ladd McConkey, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, get selected, and I wish we would have seen a little bit of a better landing spot. I really love Ladd McConkey as a prospect. I think he is a very, very good wide receiver, but you put him here in Philadelphia, it feels like there's not a lot of opportunity for him to take, assuming that the Eagles decide to stick with A.J. Brown, which I am going forward with the assumption that they will be going forward with A.J. Brown, and then they have Devontae Smith as well. So Ladd McConkey will likely be plugging in as that wide receiver 3 for Quez Watkins, who is a unrestricted free agent, and he had a 2023 season there at Georgia where he went for 30 receptions, 478 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously not the greatest statistical season, but the stats don't necessarily tell the whole story. He missed about the first month of football with some injuries. And overall, like I said, this is a very good player. The landing spot, I think, leaves a little bit to be desired. So obviously a great football team pick in real life for the Philadelphia Eagles. They get another weapon for Jalen Hurts, but for fantasy football, like I said, I don't think that this is the greatest landing spot for Ladd McConkey, but he is a good enough prospect and a prospect that I believe in enough that I would take the shot on him here at the 204. Now, coming off the board at the 205, that is where we had Jalen Polk for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they drafted him here in round 2, pick 49. 69, so a top 50 wide receiver selection for the Cincinnati Bengals. And Jayden Polk is interesting, man. He had a 2023 season of 69 receptions, 1,159 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I think you could argue that Jayden Polk should be a little bit higher considering that he got that second round draft capital and he's going to a team like the Cincinnati Bengals who do have unrestricted free agents in T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd here this offseason. Now, I do think that Jayden Polk could fit in pretty well for one of those two guys. I don't expect the Bengals to move on from both T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, but I could see them moving on from one of them, and this is the replacement to keep their 3 wide receiver trio. And I do like the fact that Jayden Polk would be that young guy tied to Joe Burrow. The only downside is that he would be playing against a true alpha wide receiver 1 in Jamar Chase, so it does cap that ceiling a little bit, similar to how we had seen the ceiling of T. Higgins get capped for multiple years. Now, I do think that T. Higgins is a better prospect than what Jayden Polk is coming into the NFL, so I don't know if I would set the expectations that high for Jayden Polk, but this does feel like a good pick for the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is somebody that I'd definitely be rolling the dice on, even though I don't love him as much as I love some of the other wide receiver prospects in this class. The landing spot speaks to me, and so I'm going to be taking Jayden Polk here at the 205. And now moving on to the 206, that is where we see wide receiver Keon Coleman, who does get selected by the New York Giants. He gets picked round 2, pick 39, so very early in that second round, coming off of a 2023 season where he had 50 receptions for 658 yards and 11 touchdowns. And earlier in this mock draft, keep in mind the New York Giants, they decided to draft Jayden Daniels. So you are going to get that Jayden Daniels, Keon Coleman stack there in New York. We talked about those weapons in New York not being very good. It was really Wan'Dale Robinson and Darren Waller who is there in New York. Now they get Keon Coleman. He's going to be able to step in as the alpha wide receiver 1 day 1. And although I have knocked Keon Coleman as a prospect, and although some of you guys, I think he is very polarizing. There's a very polarizing feel to Keon Coleman. Some people are very high, some people are very low. So some of you guys may be looking at me drafting him here at the 206 and saying you are too damn low on Keon Coleman. But this just feels like where I would be taking him in a mock draft like this. He gets to pair with Daniels moving forward. I see the pathway to fantasy relevance. I just don't know if I trust the prospect to bring that to fruition. So we will see what happens with Keon Coleman, but this is where I'm taking him in this mock draft at the 206, wide receiver for the New York Giants. Now moving on to the 207, this is where the running back drought ends. We see Jonathon Brooks go to the Dallas Cowboys. Round 2, pick 56 is the draft capital, and that tells me that they have moved on from Tony Pollard. Obviously, he is a free agent. He's going to be wanting some money, and they spend a second round pick on Jonathon Brooks out of Texas. Now, Brooks had a 2023 season where he went for 187 carries, 1,139 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And like I said, spending a second round pick on Jonathon Brooks is a pretty hefty investment, especially in today's running back market in the NFL. And that tells me that the Dallas Cowboys would have big plans for Jonathon Brooks. I don't know if they're going to use him as a 90% workload full-time back kind of guy, but it does seem like there's a lot of opportunity here for Jonathon Brooks to have in Dallas. Having that running back on a rookie contract also means that they can spend some money elsewhere. They're going to be able to pay and re-sign Tyler Biadasz, who's going to be able to beef up that offensive line. And I do think that the draft capital that they select him with and the talent of Jonathon Brooks does bring him as my RB1 in this scenario, but that just tells you how tight the race is for the running backs in this class. The draft capital and the landing spots are going to be the difference makers for us here in these rookie mocks. And in this situation, Jonathon Brooks ends up being the running back 1 in our rookie mocks, and I really do like the fit that he has here in Dallas. Now moving on to the 208, that is where we see tight end 2 come off the board, Ja'Tavion Sanders. He goes to the Miami Dolphins, and they selected him in the second round with pick 55. So he goes into this Miami offense. He's coming off of a 2023 season where he had 45 receptions for 682 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the thing about Ja'Tavion Sanders is that Miami is just continuing to add freak athletes to this offense year after year. Ja'Tavion's going to fit very well in this offense. He is a athletic freak. And although the fantasy outlook is a little bit murky because I do think that there is a lot of mouths to feed. Obviously, you have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and then Tua Tagovailoa throwing them the football. How many more fantasy points are there to go around? I don't know. It's probably going to be pretty inconsistent, but Ja'Tavion Sanders in a tight end premium, second round draft capital on an offense this good, coached by a coach like Mike McDaniel. I'm definitely willing to buy into that, especially here at the 208. Now moving on to the 209, here's where we have our running back 2 in the class, and that is Braelon Allen out of Wisconsin. He stays in Wisconsin because he goes to the Green Bay Packers. They selected him round 3, pick 91, coming off of a 2023 season where he had 181 carries for 984 yards and 12 touchdowns. And I think this fit is really, really good for Braelon Allen. Almost in contention to put him as the running back 1, but that whole round in draft capital was the difference maker between Jonathon Brooks and Braelon Allen for me. But again, Braelon Allen going to the Packers, they do have A.J. Dillon as a unrestricted free agent, so he is going to be the replacement to A.J. Dillon, plug in and play in his shoes right away, and I think he is the eventual leader of this backfield over Aaron Jones as Aaron Jones continues to age. And honestly, it's really exciting for Braelon Allen to land in this offense because this offense is up and coming. They are looking very good under Jordan Love. Pair Braelon Allen with the likes of Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jayden Reed, Luke Musgrave, Aaron Jones. I think this is a good situation for Braelon Allen, and even though year one he may kind of be in a Tajay Spears role from this season, I think 2025 and beyond, Braelon Allen is the lead back of this offense. You're going to be very happy because there's going to be a lot of touchdown opportunities for Allen here in Green Bay. Now at the 210, that is where we see another running back 3, Trey Benson, come off the board. He goes to the Arizona Cardinals. They selected him in round 3, used pick 71 on him, so he does get decent day 2 draft capital, and he's coming off of a 2023 season where he had 156 carries, 905 yards, and 14 touchdowns. And I like Trey Benson because he has that full 3-down skill set. He is going to be the eventual replacement to a guy like James Conner as he continues to age in this backfield. And similar to what we said about Braelon Allen, it may not be right away that he is fantasy relevant, but he is going to earn carries as the first year goes on, and then he's going to be the eventual guy who takes over this backfield. And then we also considered that earlier in this mock draft, the Arizona Cardinals added Brian Thomas Jr. to this offense, so maybe they do go re-sign Hollywood Brown. Now you get Brian Thomas, Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown, Trey McBride, Trey Benson. It's starting to come together for the Arizona Cardinals, and I do like this fantasy football offense, so I do think that this would be a very good fit for Trey Benson, and I do think it has enough upside that we should be considering him here at the 210. Now the second to last pick in this mock, coming in at the 211, it is going to be Blake Corum. He gets selected by the Philadelphia Eagles. They use a third-round pick on him, pick 97, and he's coming off of a 2023 season where he went for 258 carries, 1,245 yards, and 27 touchdowns. So it's hard to knock the usage and the production that Blake Corum gave us here at the collegiate level. Now the measurables, they are a little bit underwhelming, like you saw on that screen, coming in at 5'8". He's not the biggest of back, but you put him in this offense here with Jalen Hurts, with that offensive line. Obviously there's question marks about what Jason Kelce is going to be doing this offseason. I think he's probably going to retire, but I don't know, man. It seems like that guy never wants to quit playing football. And then you put him in an offense here that has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts. Blake Corum is probably going to be the starting back, and then they selected Ladd McConkey earlier in this mock draft. I think there's definitely worse situations, and Blake Corum should be able to continue to show us why he scored 27 touchdowns at Michigan, because he's going to get a lot of touchdown opportunities here in Philly as well. And just hopefully he's not getting tackled on the one as often as DeAndre Swift was, because we want to see Blake Corum score those touchdowns. We don't want to be seeing that touch push, I guess, unless you have Jalen Hurts on your fantasy team. But other than that, I think this is a great fit for Blake Corum. And again, it just feels like this draft is so deep because we're getting talented players like Blake Corum here at the 211. We're almost 24 picks into this draft. We're still getting guys that I feel comfortable putting on my fantasy football teams, and guys who I think have enough upside to eventually be able to be started or at least flexed in our fantasy football lineups in the future. And now last but certainly not least, coming off the board at the 212, that is where we had Malachi Corley. He goes to the Detroit Lions, round 2 draft capital. He goes pick 61, and this is a guy coming off of a 2023 season where he had 79 receptions, 984 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And again, I know I keep saying it. It's a testament to how deep this class is, but I really do like Malachi Corley. I think his game is very unique. He's kind of a mix of like a Deebo Samuel, Cordero Patterson, Jayden Reed type of wide receiver. You put them all together, you kind of get Malachi Corley. It's going to be interesting to see how that translates to the NFL level, but we know that those guys over there in Detroit, Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell, they are very aggressive with the play calling. They are very unique with the play calling. I think they could use a guy like Malachi Corley, and they could find a lot of uses for him in that offense. I think right away Corley could slot in as that wide receiver 3. Josh Reynolds is a free agent this offseason, so they probably are not going to be re-signing him, especially after some of those drops that we saw in the NFC Championship. And I do like Corley's game enough that I think he could eventually surpass Jameson Williams on the depth chart. I know a lot of the Jameson Williams fans won't necessarily like to hear that, but I do like Malachi Corley enough that I think he could surpass him on the depth chart. And this is a guy who, like I said, a good offense, a unique player, a very talented player. They're going to find ways to use him, and I think he's going to be able to score fantasy points because of that on your fantasy football rosters. And now that is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show our channel some support, and it does let me know that you guys are truly enjoying the video, and it really does help us out. So I would appreciate you hitting that like button. Additionally, if you want more videos like this, you never want to miss any of our content when it comes out, hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you're hitting that notification bell so you get notified when our new uploads hit your feed. And last but not least, make sure you are a member of our Discord. We do have a free Discord. It is going to be linked in the description. I ask people's help in there all the time for future videos like rookie mock drafts, startup mock drafts, trade shows, anything like that. I'm asking you guys' help so you guys can be involved in the content. And also, of course, I'm helping you guys out with your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams, giving you trade advice, waiver advice, strategy, all of that stuff. It's over there in the Discord. Awesome community. And like I said, free to join, so there is no risk in doing that. And one more thing before we get on out of here. If you want to win some free money over there at Underdog Fantasy, make sure you're using code LeagueFFB when you sign up, or use the link in the description. But I don't have anything else, so I'll see you guys on our next video. And until then, peace out.